The sun hovered high above the rooftops of Pine Ridge, casting long shadows across cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights that hadn't worked in years. In this neighborhood, opportunity was like rain in a drought, rare, almost mythical. But 17-year-old Jamari Bell had learned to find beauty in the struggle. His day had started like many others, helping kids fix busted bikes behind the community center, sharing jokes, handing out extra granola bars when younger ones pretended they were too weak to pedal, and patching up tires with makeshift materials. He didn't complain. He never did. Not when his shoes had holes, not when dinner was a maybe, and not when kids from nicer parts of town passed by and locked their doors at the sight of him. He walked home with grease on his hands and sweat on his forehead, his hoodie tied around his waist. Each step felt heavier than the last, but his heart was light. There was something about helping others that made the rest of life's heaviness a little easier to carry. As he rounded the corner near the abandoned gas station, now more weeds than cement, he spotted it. A Bentley. A real, sleek, glistening black Bentley, its left front tire flat as a pancake. The hood was up, steam rising lazily into the sky like smoke signals. Jamari blinked. Cars like that didn't break down here. In fact, cars like that didn't even come here. Next to the vehicle, pacing and muttering into a phone that apparently had no signal, was a man in a navy blue suit and Italian shoes that probably cost more than the average Pine Ridge monthly rent. He looked frustrated, tapping the hood of the car, then the screen of his phone, then glancing down the street like he expected help to just appear out of thin air. Jamari watched for a moment, instinct wrestling with caution. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Jamari, baby, I love how you help folks. But remember, not everyone sees what I see. Some folks see a young black boy and only feel fear." Still, Jamari's conscience tugged at him. The man was clearly out of place, and out of luck. Jamari wiped his palms on his jeans and walked over. "Need help, sir?" he asked, his voice polite but firm, feet planted a few feet away in case things went wrong. The man looked up, eyebrows raised. His eyes scanned Jamari from head to toe, taking in the worn sneakers, the oil-stained hands, the slight huff in his chest from walking miles under the sun. "You know how to change a tire?" the man asked, guarded but curious. "Yes, sir," Jamari nodded. "I've done it before." The man hesitated a beat longer than necessary, then gestured toward the trunk. "Spares in there." Jamari got to work immediately, moving with practiced ease. He popped the trunk, pulled out the spare, grabbed the jack and tools, and set them on the sidewalk. He knelt beside the car, placing the jack carefully before starting to loosen the bolts. The man watched him closely. "Where'd you learn to do this?" "My dad taught me," Jamari replied, not looking up. He used to say a man should be able to fix what's broken around him. "Smart man," the stranger replied. Jamari corrected quietly. "He passed when I was 13. Cancer." "I'm sorry to hear that." Jamari gave a small shrug, as if that part of his soul had been folded away and stored long ago. "It's life. You just gotta keep moving." The stranger nodded, falling quiet. Jamari kept working, his hands moving rhythmically. In 10 minutes, the flat was off and the spare was on. He checked the bolts, made sure everything was secure, then stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "There. You're good to go. But I'd get the radiator checked too. It's steaming, might be overheating." The man blinked, surprised. "You noticed that?" "Yes, sir." The man walked around to check the front. Sure enough, the engine still hissed. He turned to Jamari with a mix of curiosity and something else, respect. "You're very observant." "I try to be." The man extended his hand. "Charles Whitmore." Jamari's breath caught. He'd heard that name before. Charles Whitmore, the millionaire investor whose face was on city billboards. Whitmore Financial, charity galas, real estate. The man was a walking news article. Jamari wiped his hand quickly before shaking it. "Jamari Bell." Charles smiled faintly. "Thank you, Jamari. Most people would have walked on by." Jamari gave a small smile. "Maybe. But if I can help, I do. That's how I was raised." Charles reached into his wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Take this. For your time." Jamari's smile faded slightly, and he stepped back. "No, thank you, sir. I didn't do it for money." Charles's brow rose. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. I help people 'cause that's what you're supposed to do. If someone helped my mom when she was stuck, I'd be grateful." Charles looked at the bill, then slowly put it away. Not many people would have said no. Jamari gave a small shrug. "Not many people still believe in doing the right thing for free, I guess." Charles chuckled, a genuine sound. He looked Jamari over again, this time not just noticing the oil stains or tattered clothes, but the calm confidence, the steadiness in his eyes. It wasn't every day someone turned down $100 bill in a neighborhood like this. "What are you doing tomorrow afternoon?" Jamari blinked. "Why? I want to take you to lunch. Hear more about the bike repairs you mentioned." "You want to take me to lunch?" Charles nodded. "Yes. You've got something rare, Jamari. I'd like to learn more about you." Jamari hesitated. His stomach fluttered with nerves. "I finish at noon. I'll pick you up at the center." With that, Charles got back in his car. The Bentley hummed back to life, and within seconds, it had disappeared down the road, leaving Jamari standing there in the soft shimmer of late afternoon heat, replaying everything that had just happened. He walked home slowly, each step feeling heavier with wonder. He passed the old barber shop, where the window was permanently cracked. He passed Ms. Tilda, who waved from her porch while fanning herself with a church bulletin. He passed the lot where he and his dad used to throw a football before the sickness took him. And when he finally reached the apartment he shared with his mom and little sister, he looked up at the peeling paint and broken railing and thought, maybe today was the start of something. Inside, his mother looked up from folding laundry on their second-hand couch. She noticed the way his eyes were glowing. "What happened to you?" Jamari leaned against the doorway and smiled. "I helped someone with a flat tire." She gave him a knowing look. And it wasn't just anyone. It was Charles Whitmore. Her hands paused in midair. "The millionaire Charles Whitmore." Jamari nodded slowly. "He's picking me up for lunch tomorrow." His mother blinked, the towel in her hand forgotten. "Say that again." Jamari smiled. "Yeah, that's what I said too." They both sat in stunned silence for a moment before his little sister burst into the room, a backpack trailing behind her and crumbs on her face. Jamari reached out and ruffled her hair. "Guess what, Mia? Your big brother might be having lunch with a millionaire tomorrow." She frowned. "Does that mean you're gonna be on TV?" Jamari laughed. "Not yet." But as he sat down that night, staring out at the dim streetlights and the occasional hum of a passing car, he couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. Maybe it was the way Mr. Whitmore had looked at him, not like a charity case, not like a stereotype, but like a person with something to offer. Like someone worth knowing. He had no way of knowing then that his entire world was about to change. All because he'd stopped to help a man with a flat tire. And the wheel had only just begun to turn. The morning air in Pine Ridge was thick with humidity, but Jamari Bell was already up and dressed before the sun had fully crested the horizon. His hands were clean, his jeans were the best pair he owned, only one tear in the knee, and his shirt was freshly ironed thanks to his mom's careful work the night before. He had even applied a bit of his dad's old cologne, the scent of sandalwood lingering faintly in the air. There was a nervous energy humming through him, an electric buzz in his limbs that wouldn't fade. He paced near the front of the community center where he volunteered, checking the time on his phone every few minutes. Noon. That was the plan, but by 11:50, his heart was already racing. People came and went from the center, parents dropping off kids, volunteers arriving for their shifts, a group of toddlers running wild in a circle. Jamari waved at Ms. Ortiz, the director, who gave him a thumbs up and a knowing smile. At 12:02, the Bentley rolled down the block like a shadow in daylight, smooth and elegant. It slowed in front of the building, and the window lowered just enough for Jamari to see Charles Whitmore's calm expression behind designer sunglasses. "Hop in," Charles said. Jamari hesitated for half a breath before opening the passenger side door and climbing in. The air conditioning kissed his face with cool relief, and the leather seats felt like clouds under him. "Nice shirt," Charles remarked, pulling away from the curb. "Thanks," Jamari said, tugging at the sleeves nervously. "My mom helped me pick it out." Charles nodded. "She did a good job." They drove through the city in silence for a few minutes. The difference between Pine Ridge and the areas they passed now was stark. Gone were the boarded-up windows and corner stores with metal bars. These streets had cafes with sidewalk seating, banks with polished glass, flower beds blooming at every intersection. Jamari felt like he'd stepped into another world. They pulled into the valet of an upscale restaurant whose name Jamari had only ever seen on cooking shows. A sharply dressed host greeted Charles by name, and within moments, they were led to a private booth overlooking the city. The waiters treated Charles with reverence, but also looked curiously at Jamari, who sat straight-backed and alert, unsure of which fork to use or how to place his napkin. Charles noticed and gave him a reassuring smile. "Relax. This place is just walls and chairs. Nothing to be nervous about." Jamari nodded, loosening his shoulders slightly. Sorry. I've just never been anywhere like this before. That's all right, Charles said. I didn't grow up in five-star restaurants either. Jamari raised an eyebrow. No. Charles leaned back, fingers steepled. I was raised by a single mother in a two-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. We had one heater that barely worked and a neighbor who played the trumpet badly until midnight. But she made sure I got to school, made sure I studied. I had a job at 13 and my first suit at 23. Jamari stared at him, surprised. You didn't inherit money. Charles laughed. No. I built everything from the ground up. Real estate, investments, hard lessons. Made mistakes, learned from them. That's why I was so surprised yesterday, when you turned down the money. Jamari looked down. It didn't feel right to take it. I wasn't trying to get anything from you. I just thought, you needed help. You have something rare, Charles said. Most people are either too distracted or too afraid to help. And if they do, they expect something in return. But you helped because that's who you are. Jamari didn't know what to say. Compliments like that felt too big to wear. He shifted in his seat as the waiter returned and placed two plates in front of them, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a small tower of rice. Charles gestured to the food. Try it. You'll like it. Jamari took a bite. It was better than anything he'd ever eaten, flavors dancing across his tongue. This is really good. Charles chuckled. Told you. Between bites, Charles asked about Jamari's life. Where he went to school. What his grades were like. What he did at the center. Jamari answered honestly. He told him about the broken bikes, about tutoring the younger kids in math, about how he wanted to be an engineer someday, maybe even open his own workshop. I like building things, Jamari said. Things people throw away, I like fixing them. Charles listened intently. That's a gift. Most people look at broken things and only see trash. You see value. Jamari nodded. It's what my dad taught me. He always said broken doesn't mean useless. Charles pushed his plate away and folded his hands on the table. Tell me something, Jamari. If you had all the resources in the world, money, connections, anything, what would you do with it? The question stunned him. Jamari stared out the window for a long moment. I'd start a workshop, he said finally. A place where kids from my neighborhood could come learn real skills. Not just book stuff, but things they can use. Mechanics, engineering, even art. A place where they feel seen. Like they matter. Charles leaned forward, interested. Why that? Because I think a lot of kids where I'm from grow up thinking their life is already written, Jamari said quietly. Like if they're born in Pine Ridge, they're supposed to stay there. Like the world's already decided what they can't be. But if you give someone the tools to build something, maybe they'll see they can build a life too. Charles sat back, nodding slowly. That's powerful. They finished lunch, and as they stood outside waiting for the valet, Charles handed Jamari a card. Come by my office Monday. I'd like to talk more about your workshop idea. Jamari took the card as if it were made of gold. You serious? Very. The ride home felt unreal. When the Bentley dropped him off in front of the community center, Jamari stepped out with something new in his chest, a flicker of possibility. A spark. Ms. Ortiz raised an eyebrow from the doorway and gave him a slow, impressed nod. That evening, Jamari sat with his mom at the kitchen table, telling her everything, every word, every question, every bite of that fancy salmon. She listened, her eyes shining with pride, and when he told her about the business card, she smiled wider than he'd seen in years. You've always had something special in you, she said softly. I just hoped someone else would see it too. Monday came like a freight train. Jamari wore the same shirt, this time with polished shoes and a notebook in hand. The Whitmore Financial Building loomed like a skyscraper made of light and glass. He'd never even been in an elevator that high. But when he stepped onto the 32nd floor, Charles greeted him like an old friend. They sat in a private office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows. Charles asked more questions, what Jamari would name the workshop, how he'd fund it, what kind of staff he'd hire. Jamari answered each one carefully, and when he didn't know, he said so. He was honest, and Charles respected that. After an hour, Charles stood, walked to a shelf, and pulled down a slim folder. He placed it on the table in front of Jamari. This is a proposal. My team and I want to offer you a scholarship, fully paid, for college. Engineering, business, whatever you choose. And while you study, I want you to intern here at Whitmore Financial. Learn how things run. Learn how to build what you want. Jamari's hands trembled as he opened the folder. It was real. His name. His dream. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Charles said simply. And build that workshop. Tears welled up in Jamari's eyes, but he didn't wipe them away. Yes, he whispered. I'll do it. As he left the building, walking through downtown like he was walking on air, Jamari thought back to the moment it all started. A flat tire. A man stranded. A decision to help, not for gain, but because it was right. That was the turning point. The moment a simple act of kindness began to rewrite the story of a boy from Pine Ridge. And it was only the beginning.